For decades, the story of homelessness in Los Angeles was a tragedy told in rising numbers. It was a relentless climb, year after year, with no peak in sight. Between 2018 and 2020 alone, the number of people without a home in LA County didn't just rise, it surged by nearly 26%. By 2022, on any given night, more than 69,000 people were homeless. It was a crisis that felt permanent, a stain on the fabric of the city. Then, something changed. The giant, slow-moving machinery of government, a system often criticized for being broken and sluggish, suddenly lurched into a different gear. And for the first time in 7 years, the numbers started to fall. This wasn't an accident. It was by design. This is the story of how Los Angeles declared war on its own paralysis, and what happened next. The unwinnable war. To understand just how radical the last 2 years have been, you have to understand the years of failure that came before. For a long time, tackling homelessness in Los Angeles felt like trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. The heart of the problem has always been a brutal economic equation. In Los Angeles County, a renter needs to make nearly $42 an hour to afford the average 2-bedroom apartment. That's almost 3 times the city's minimum wage. This isn't just a hurdle. It's a structural barrier that pushes thousands of people to the brink every single year. One lost job, one medical bill, one surprise eviction, and the slide into homelessness can be terrifyingly fast. For years, the official response was a patchwork of well-meaning but totally overwhelmed programs. The city and the county, 2 separate government giants, often worked in their own separate worlds. Their efforts were supposed to be coordinated by the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, or LASA. But even with billions of dollars from voter-approved taxes, the crisis only got deeper. Public frustration exploded. Residents watched as huge encampments became permanent fixtures in their neighborhoods, from Venice Beach to the San Fernando Valley. Business owners worried about safety and sanitation. And for the people living on the streets, life was a daily fight for survival. With lifespans cut short by an average of 20 years from violence and the elements. This wasn't just a failure of money, it was a failure of the system itself. The response was scattered, the goals were fuzzy, and no one seemed to be accountable. The situation got so bad that by 2019, more homeless people were dying of hypothermia in sunny Los Angeles than in New York City. This was the backdrop, a crisis spiraling out of control, a public that had lost all faith, and a system that seemed fundamentally broken. It was clear the old way of doing things, the slow grind of bureaucracy, wasn't the solution. It was part of the problem. Something dramatic had to happen to shock the system and break the cycle of despair. The emergency declaration, a radical shift. In December of 2022, on her very first day in office, newly elected Mayor Karen Bass did something that signaled a clean break from the past. She declared a state of emergency on homelessness in the city of Los Angeles. A few weeks later, in January 2023, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors did the same thing. Now, on the surface, this might sound like political posturing, but in the world of government, declaring a state of emergency is like pulling a fire alarm. It unlocks special powers designed to cut through the exact red tape that had been strangling progress for years. The emergency declaration let the city fast-track approvals for affordable housing and sign contracts for things like motel rooms without the usual months-long bidding process. It was a direct attack on the bureaucracy's obsession with process over people. But the biggest change wasn't just about speed. It was about unity. For the first time, the city and the county, 2 powers that had long moved on parallel, often conflicting, tracks, were forced into what Mayor Bass called a locked arms approach. The declarations demanded a new level of collaboration, with LASA at the center of this unified strategy. This shift was nothing short of radical. In a place as politically divided as Los Angeles County, with its 88 different cities, just getting the 2 biggest players, the city and the county, on the same page was a huge achievement. It meant that outreach workers, service providers, and housing resources could finally be used in a coordinated way, instead of as a jumble of competing efforts. As LASA's CEO, Dr. Valencia Adams-Kellum put it, this alignment was the turning point. The emergency wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a complete restructuring of the response. It was an admission that the old way had failed, and that only a unified emergency-level response could start to turn the tide. The new playbook, Inside Safe and Pathway Home. Armed with the power of an emergency declaration, Los Angeles didn't just do the old things faster, it rolled out a whole new playbook. The city's flagship program was called Inside Safe. The idea was simple but profound. Instead of just managing encampments, the goal was to eliminate them by offering every single person living there a spot in a hotel or motel room. This wasn't a cot in a crowded shelter. It was a private room with a door that locked. For anyone who has survived the trauma and constant vulnerability of the street, that distinction is everything. The Inside Safe model tried to fix a key failure of past efforts. Before, an outreach worker might connect with someone, but finding an available bed that met their needs was a nightmare. Inside Safe operations, on the other hand, are large-scale, targeted missions. An entire encampment is identified, and outreach teams spend days or even weeks building trust, promising people a direct path indoors. Once a person moves into a motel, they're immediately connected with case managers who start the hard work of getting them an ID, health care, and, eventually, a permanent place to live. The county launched a similar program called Pathway Home, focused on encampments in its territory, connecting people to the same kinds of services. The approach is designed to be more humane and, frankly, more effective. It gives people immediate safety and stability, which is the crucial first step before anyone can start to deal with bigger issues like their health or finding a job. It also makes caseworkers far more efficient. Instead of driving all over the city looking for their clients, they know exactly where to find them, in the motels. This model isn't perfect, and it has its own challenges, but it's a clear break from the piecemeal strategy of the past. It's a strategy built on a simple premise. You can't ask people to rebuild their lives while they're still living in a crisis. You have to bring them inside first. The power of a plan. LA's 2030 goals. While programs like Inside Safe were the immediate on-the-ground response, LA officials knew a short-term fix wasn't enough. To solve a crisis this deep, you need a long-term, systemic plan. For years, the problem wasn't just a lack of money, but a lack of a clear, unified vision for what winning would even look like. In late March 2025, that changed. The LA County Board of Supervisors endorsed a set of clear, ambitious, and measurable goals for the entire region to hit by 2030. This wasn't just a vague promise to do better. It was a specific, data-driven roadmap. The plan is built around three main goals. First, cut the number of people becoming homeless for the first time each year by 20%. This is a huge shift toward prevention, finally trying to turn off the tap. Second, get 30,000 people into permanent housing every year, a massive 50% increase over what they'd been doing. And third, reduce the number of people living on the streets by nearly a third from where it was in 2024. Adopting these goals was a landmark moment. In a fragmented place like LA, having shared goals is a North Star. It allows dozens of different agencies, cities, and nonprofits to pull in the same direction. It also creates a new level of accountability. For the first time, the public and the media have a clear yardstick to measure the performance of their elected officials. These goals are designed to be tough, but doable, pushing the system to improve without promising an overnight miracle. This focus on a long-term, measurable strategy showed a new maturity in LA's approach, moving beyond just managing the crisis to actually laying a foundation for real, sustained progress. The numbers don't lie, the first cracks of light. So, with a state of emergency, a new unified strategy, and a long-term plan, did any of it actually work? The data gives a clear, and for many, a surprising answer. Yes. For the first time since 2017, Los Angeles has now seen back-to-back annual decreases in unsheltered homelessness. In 2024, the annual homeless count revealed a stunning 10% drop in unsheltered homelessness in the city of Los Angeles and a 5% drop countywide. Then, in March 2025, preliminary data from the next count showed the trend was continuing, projecting another 5 to 10% decrease across the region. While it's a modest reduction in the face of a massive crisis, this sustained drop is a monumental achievement. It proved that the endless upward climb wasn't inevitable and that the new strategies were actually making a difference. According to LASA, this progress in Los Angeles is happening while homelessness is increasing nationally, which suggests the region is finally starting to buck the trend. The progress isn't just on the streets. The system itself is working better. In the 2023 to 2024 fiscal year, the rehousing system moved 45% more people directly from the street into permanent housing compared to the year before. It also moved 32% more people into interim housing, like the hotels used by Inside Safe. In 2023, the county celebrated a record 27,419 people placed into permanent housing, a testament to the system's growing power. These aren't just numbers. This is real progress being seen in some of the most visible and difficult areas of the crisis, including Skid Row, the San Gabriel Valley, and East Los Angeles. This data represented the first real cracks of light in what had long seemed like a perpetually dark tunnel. It was proof that with political will, a unified strategy, and an emergency focus, a crisis long considered unwinnable could, in fact, be turned around. This story is still being written, and the long-term success of these strategies is far from guaranteed. It raises big questions about whether this model could be a blueprint for other cities. What do you think are the biggest hurdles still facing Los Angeles? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into the complex systems that shape our world, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. The rot within, scandal and accountability. Just as the first signs of real progress were starting to show, a story of deep dysfunction blew up, threatening to undermine not just the recent gains, but also the fragile public trust that was beginning to rebuild. The scandal centered on the very agency at the heart of the region's response, the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, LATSA. While LASA was helping to execute the new emergency strategies on the streets, behind the scenes, its own house was reportedly in a state of financial and administrative collapse. In early 2025, a damning audit ordered by a federal judge was made public. The findings were brutal. Auditors who reviewed the city's homeless programs managed by LASA found the paperwork was so poor it was nearly impossible to accurately track where all the money had gone. The report alleged that the agency failed to verify whether the services invoiced were provided, creating a massive risk that money wasn't going where it was supposed to. This wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping. One lawyer for the group that sued called it a moral failure that was devastating the streets. The fallout was swift and severe. In April 2025, the new U.S. Attorney for the region announced the creation of a homelessness fraud and corruption task force to investigate how federal tax dollars were being spent. The announcement specifically called out the reckless spending and lack of transparency found in the audits. In response to the meltdown in confidence, the LA County Board of Supervisors took the dramatic step of voting to pull more than $300 million in annual funding from LASA's direct control, deciding instead to create a new county department to manage the money. Just days later, the head of LASA, Dr. Valehia Adams-Kellum, who had been praised for the recent success in reducing street homelessness, announced her resignation, citing the county's decision. This implosion revealed a stunning paradox. It was possible for a strategy to be working on the streets while the institution managing it was failing from the inside. The scandal proved that even the best plans are vulnerable to mismanagement. It was a stark reminder that while getting governments to work together and set goals is critical, without strict, transparent oversight of the billions of taxpayer dollars being spent, any progress could be built on a foundation of sand. The long road ahead, a fragile victory. The recent progress in Los Angeles is real, but it's also incredibly fragile. The new strategies are basically a powerful emergency response to a massive disaster. They've been effective at rescuing people from the most immediate danger, life on the streets, but they don't by themselves fix the underlying problems that caused the disaster in the first place. The city and county are still facing a catastrophic shortage of affordable housing. According to one report, Los Angeles County is short nearly 500,000 affordable homes for its poorest renters. As long as that gap exists, people will keep falling into homelessness. The system is getting about 27,000 people into housing a year, but more than 60,000 become newly homeless in that same period, pushed out by low wages and high rents. It's a brutal numbers game. The city is essentially bailing water out of a boat that still has a massive hole in it. The new emergency measures gave them a bigger bucket, but they haven't patched the hole. On top of that, the homeless population isn't one single group. A large number of people suffer from serious mental illness or substance use disorders, problems that require intensive, long-term, and expensive care that a motel room alone can't fix. And while programs like Inside Safe have been praised for being compassionate, they've also been criticized. Some reports show that only a small percentage of people who enter the motels have successfully moved into permanent housing. A recent study by the Rand Corporation even suggested that encampment cleanups, including Inside Safe, have no long-term effect on the number of people living on the streets in those areas, as the numbers tend to return to previous levels within a month or two. Critics argue the program is a costly, temporary fix that doesn't solve the root of the crisis. These challenges show just how hard it will be to keep the momentum going. The emergency declaration lit a fire under the bureaucracy, but only a sustained, decades-long commitment to building affordable housing and expanding mental health care will ever put it out for good. The story of LA's fight against homelessness over the past 2 years is a powerful lesson in both what political will can do and how deep systemic dysfunction can run. For the better part of a decade, the crisis felt inevitable, a relentless climb of human suffering that seemed to mock every dollar spent. The decision by the city and county to declare a state of emergency and finally work together was a genuine paradigm shift. It was an admission that their fragmented, business-as-usual approach had been a catastrophic failure. The results that followed, the first consecutive drops in street homelessness in years, are undeniable. They prove that even the most deeply rooted urban crises are not impossible to solve. When governments are forced to align, cut red tape, and focus their resources, they can achieve real, life-saving results. The story of Inside Safe and the ambitious 2030 goals shows that a mix of immediate, humane action and long-term, accountable planning can actually bend the curve. But this isn't a simple victory story. The massive scandal at LASA, with its revelations of mismanagement and missing money, is a sobering reality check. It shows that even as one part of the system was getting results, another was rotting from the inside. This paradox is the core of the challenge LA still faces. The city has proven it knows how to get people off the streets. The question now is whether it can build a system that's trustworthy enough to manage the billions required, and whether it has the political courage to fix the deep structural problems, especially the crushing lack of affordable housing, that created the crisis in the first place. Los Angeles has charted a new course, offering a glimmer of hope for itself and for cities across the country. But the journey is far from over.